Let's continue today's session. This moment, let's put aside everything else human has created so we can look with a fresh mind. The mind is always trapped in all kinds of thoughts, ideas, fantasies, illusions. And most of us, the mind is very limited, very petty. All behaviors are driven by all kinds of reactions because the behaviors come from the thoughts. Living in this way, the mind can't respond to the question adequately. At each moment, there are all kinds of issues popping up. But the mind, which is trapped in conclusions, ideas, philosophies, views, cannot see the question, the problem clearly. Therefore, it can't respond to the issues adequately. And more issues are accumulated. And this is most people's life. To understand ourselves is to see this inadequacy clearly. The mind always functions locally to a small fragment where our personal experience are built up. And this world is trapped in numerous fragments. Each of us is not only divided by those fragments, also the tremendous conflicts within oneself. Are also come from those fragments, which are all thoughts. Being trapped in a fragment, the mind has a very narrow scope. The experience is only limited to that small fragment. And out of that fragment, there's self-projection. There's translation, interpretation, according to one's very limited, narrow experience. And everyone who is living in fragments is doing the same. There are numerous self-projections, numerous conflicts. The mind is confused because it receives different things from different people according to their own very little, incomplete experience. And we stay away from each other, stay aloof, because this conflict is there. Because we are all living in fragments. We never treat life totally. In this mental construct of the society, the mind is trained to be a profession, to do a profession, to have expertise, So the mind is trained to be in a small corner, to dig in, to dig deep. And based on this small corner, we build up the function, also the prestige, the fame around this function, which further becomes part of the ego. This society, which emphasizes the functionality in such a way that only enhances the egoism. So the mind is conditioned to this life, a life full of fragments. And in that fragmentation, there's perpetual division, conflict between different people, between you and me. And this brings about this individualism. All of us become more and more separated. Divided. Fragmented. And life is full of misery. The mind is merely escaping from those issues. And each of us is doing the same. The whole society is doing the same. But the very doing so, all of us don't meet at this moment. All of us, none of us really see the issues, see what is actually taking place at this moment. The mind is escaping into all kinds of pleasure-seeking activities, all kinds of daydreaming, illusions. In order to achieve a temporary mental balance, emotional balance. But the mind is struggling. It is suffering. And each of us is fully responsible for such a monstrous society. In the very pleasure-seeking, there's only a responsibility. And this world is trapped in such a vicious circle. Craving more materialistic things for pleasure, for momentary happiness. But life becomes utterly empty, meaningless. So this self-inquiry is to let the mind face the issue. See what is actually taking place without running away, escaping. But this is becoming more and more difficult because the mind has escaped too deep into thoughts, into all kinds of subtle pleasure-seeking activities. The mind is totally trapped in those disorders. To understand oneself actually and clearly is to see all those disorders the mind is trapped in. Which requires tremendous observation and diligence. When those disorders are seen by a mind which is serious to inquire, the very exposure of the issues into the consciousness dissolves the issues. This means that the very understanding of oneself deeply is emptying the mind. Understanding is emptying. It is a unitary process. When the mind is full of thoughts, ideas, views, conclusions, the mind is ignorant. In the sense of lacking this understanding of oneself. So this understanding is not merely intellectual. This understanding is actual because the mind empties itself. But if you just regard the understanding as intellectual, you can't go very far because it is still the thought processes. You still treat that as an idea, as a thought or philosophy. The mind can be easily bored with it. That's not understanding at all. The mind is still trapped in thoughts. And you are not serious enough to look at yourself. This seriousness is to give full attention to the issues with this intensity to understand, to figure out what is actually. The mind empties itself, which is the actual understanding. When you really go into yourself, seeing all the issues, all the disorders you are trapped in, the mind must empty itself naturally. And what the speaker says is no longer relevant. It might give you some guidance, but it is irrelevant when you really see the issues for yourself. Else, the words of the speaker fill your mind. It becomes another idea, thoughts, philosophies. So this journey requires your diligence to really gather the energy to give full attention to the issues. Not taking pleasure in the verse of the speaker. And then the mind is trapped again in those verse. We are using verse to explain the issues, but the actual issues are beyond the verse. You must see it clearly for yourself. Because only you can see your issues without being distorted by verse thoughts. You can perceive it. And nobody else can really do that for you. And again, all of those requires your diligence. The mind stops being lazy. And it is the diligent mind that is able to empty itself. And this whole journey is called meditation. So before we continue today's session, as usual, the speaker is inviting you to stay silent for 3 or 4 minutes so we can continue this full attention by doing some breathing exercise or just listen to the sound around you or feel the sensation from the body. And let's savor this quietude together. Let's do it now. Most of us are living in thoughts. And all the life activities are driven by thoughts, by numerous reactions, emotions, impulse. From home to work to education to every corner of the society, thoughts are everywhere. Compared to other species on this planet, human beings are able to use thoughts to do a lot of things, making a lot of things. From the car on the road, the ships on the water, to the space exploration. Using thoughts, human beings are rather capable of doing a lot of things. But thoughts are also dangerous. At the first sight, people might not associate it with the physical danger. But when one really goes into the nature of thoughts, the essence of it, one must find out for oneself that the danger of thoughts is also part of this physical danger. In this outer world, we have accumulated abundant knowledge about all kinds of things, which embodies this civilization. But unfortunately, the knowledge doesn't really stay in the right place. It overflows into the psyche. Bring about numerous and diverse psychological activities, which becomes the so-called spiritual life or the mental world we are living in, perhaps we are trapped in. To look at ourselves is to understand the nature of thoughts. Because our existence in this world is merely based on some thoughts. Isn't it? The name, the prestige, the fame, the position, the title, salary, estate, money, everything is around this name. And this name, and for most of us, the name has the extraordinary meaning for the living. The neural loops are functioning around that name. And that's become the existence of most people on this planet. a conceptual existence based on a name. You see, from day first when you were born, your parents gave you a name, and then from school to college or to workplace, everything in society functions around its name. And most of energy has gone to that name. I need to work hard. I need to strive for something, for a better car, for a wonderful holiday in other countries. I need to fulfill my desire, my dream, my ambition. I need to have pleasure. I want to have company. I want to be happy. You see, all the energy of life has been dumped into this label, the name. And this label is dominating most of us, right? We don't see each other. We only see each other through the label, through your functionality, through your work, your title, your position. You may assume the authority, but actually, it's still you, the person. The name, the authority are all conceptual. They are all thought processes. And we all taught, we all trained to be self-important. Me first. I should care about myself. And we all do the same. But this existence, based on thoughts, are never stable. Because thoughts are never stable. And this existence brings about a strong sense of insecurity. And this society emphasizes the self-importance. But this self, the existence of it, is based on thoughts. And the self feels insecure. So, in a society which emphasizes this self-importance, everyone feels insecure. Then this security becomes something very important in such a society. And unfortunately, we don't examine. We don't really go deep into this issue of security. We all stay on the surface. So we merely indulge ourselves to fulfill ourselves for a sense of security. But we don't really go into it. So the mind in this society is conditioned to this seeking security for the self. Our life inevitably becomes bitter. We all strive for security, but we don't examine it. We think it is something that exists, and this becomes our collective illusion. We all strive for it, but we never get it. When we fulfill ourselves, there's a temporary sense of satisfaction, gratification, pleasure that makes the mind forget the security for a while. And that's the only thing we can do. We all take pleasures. We all seeking pleasures to alleviate this issue of feeling insecure. The issue that has never been solved at all. And we think this is normal. The mind is conditioned to this, feeling that this is normal. Because everybody is doing the same, and we are conforming to each other. We are imitating each other. But we don't really stop to look, to examine, to inquire, to understand. Because we are too lazy, aren't we? The mind is too lazy. A lazy mind is always conforming and imitating. Diligence means that the mind stops imitating and conforming by being aware. Being aware of all these mental dynamics. All those thought processes. To be aware, the mind must inquire and go into the psyche. As we said earlier, this requires your energy that must be gathered from the thoughts, illusions, ideas, so the mind is able to give full attention to the issues. When the mind sees clearly that this security doesn't exist, what's the point of seeking it? Then the mind will see this circus of the whole society. It is a circus, isn't it? The mind is trapped in a pattern without being aware of it. Therefore, the mind has no freedom, trapped in all kinds of daily miseries, contradictions, conflicts, and turbulence. When the mind sees clearly, there's no such thing called security. The mind is already out of this mainstream, the circus. the seeking security only bring about struggle, conflict, all kinds of miseries, except a few temporary moments of pleasure. It has no meaning. When the mind has no seeking at all, when the mind is not seeking at all, the mind does not feel insecure. But when the mind is seeking, the mind feels insecure. One must find out for oneself to make sense of this statement. So can one live a life without being trapped by this illusion? Not only the personal illusions, but also these collective illusions of the society, which mean that the mind is conditioned to the society, these collective illusions. Can the mind be aware of overdose? Being aware of all those thought processes, which means that the mind understands the futility of thoughts psychologically. You can't really go into the content of thoughts, which is numerous, incessant. And if you do that, you will be trapped again in thoughts. But when the mind sees clearly that psychologically, there's no place for thoughts at all. The mind negates the thoughts totally, without a motive. When the mind has a motive, there's no negation, because the motive is still a thought processes in the psyche. So when the mind negates the thought psychologically, the mind sets free itself. Such a state of mind doesn't seek. It stays with what is actually. And in that state of mind, the mind doesn't know what is insecure. But as long as the mind is seeking, which means that the mind is into the thoughts again, the mind is trapped in the knowing. And in the knowing, the mind knows what is insecure when all the issues pop up or come back again around this perpetual issue of insecurity. And when the mind is no longer trapped by thoughts, which means that the mind negates the thoughts totally and psychologically, there's spontaneity. When the mind is trapped in thoughts, it is never spontaneous. because all the behaviors are driven by thoughts, by reactions, by desires. It is not spontaneity. It is mechanical. Just like when two persons meet each other, they talk immediately. It is never spontaneous. Because the verse carries the thoughts pushes the verse. It is not a spontaneous process. But it is easily to misunderstand this as something spontaneous due to this lack of awareness, self-awareness. If when one is really aware of this, one must find out that this, when the mind is in thoughts, there's no such thing called spontaneity at all. When both of us are aware of the thoughts, the danger of it, perhaps we don't speak to each other randomly. Because talking with the verse uttered, compelled by thoughts, it might bring some pleasure. And most people enjoy this talking to derive pleasure. But this communication via verse is rather limited. It is the automatic reactions from the thoughts. And in that state, nothing is spontaneous. So this spontaneity, which is the clarity, comes from this self-awareness. When the mind is no longer trapped by thoughts, when the mind is no longer seeking pleasure, seeking fulfillment, there is spontaneity. Else the mind is trapped by the mechanical loops of the thoughts. And in that state, the mind is only trapped. Nothing is spontaneous. So now, time again for us to continue this full attention by doing some breathing exercise, following or not following the audio guide. So we still give full attention to this moment, to reflect upon what we have inquired, and still feel the breath, feel the sensation, and listen attentively to the sound around us. Let's do it now. Now, let's take a 10-minute meditation. Start by taking a moment to find a comfortable position to sit in a posture that you feel relaxed and get alert. Let hands rest on your knees or laps. Let the eyes close gently. Soften your forehead. Act a soft smile in the corner of your lips. Breathe naturally. As you breathe in, be aware that you are breathing in. Feel the sensation of breathing in. The region can be the nostrils, can be the belly, can be anywhere. Focus on the part you feel most. As you breathe out, be aware that you are breathing out. Feel the sensation of breathing out. The region can be the nostrils, can be the belly, can be anywhere. Focus on the part you feel most. Fix your attention on the breath. Let go of any thought, words, images. This moment, nothing is more important than breath. While you are listening to the bell, check where your attention is. If it wasn't on the breath, after the bell, gently invite your attention back to the breath and sustain your attention on the breath. Slowly bring your awareness back to this room. Feel into your body. Wiggle your fingers and toes. When you are ready, open your eyes. This is the whole content of today's session. We have inquired together into thoughts, understanding. Understanding is emptying. Thoughts have no place psychologically. When the mind is trapped in thoughts, there's no spontaneity. Because spontaneity is never mechanical. It comes from the intelligence of a mind that is never trapped by any thoughts. This means there must be diligent observation. And tremendous understanding. And the playback of this session can be found from the URL on screen. In case you need to rewatch it, re-savor the meaning, rediscover this inner journey of living. And please share this session with more people, if possible, to bring clarity to more people. And everyone is welcome to donate. Donate for the goodness. And also, it is out of your goodness to donate, to support to Mindiverse Foundation, to support it in this monstrous society. Great. Hope everybody is doing well, living peacefully, moment by moment. And let's meet in the future sessions. Take care.